perhaps unique. There was a programme on the television earlier this week, a 2-hour documentary on Islam called The Quran, which was quite illuminating, because one of the things it showed was that if you look at the Quran, it's far from it conforming to that dictum at the beginning. What was it? Doubt nothing, herein, or the one that you gave. In fact, it said if you look at the Quran closely, there are all sorts of contradictions in it, as there are in similar Christian books and books of other religions, and that it was what somebody referred to as a supermarket of ideas. You can pick and mix. You can choose the bits you like at a particular time, pull them out and say, this is Islam. And that's the kind of thing that's happened, it seems to me, in recent times. Islam's been all sorts of things over the centuries. In the early centuries of Islam, it was, Islam was the world centre of culture, of science, of mathematics, etc. That's not much talked about now, and it's no longer the case, of course. But in particular, so what I'm trying to say is that the circumstances are everything. The particular ideas can be plucked from the Quran according to the circumstances in which a particular state or movement or set of believers find themselves. And it seems to me, and this is the point I'm sort of coming to, is that modern political Islam is the sort of Frankenstein of the Cold War. It's the Frankenstein of the battle, the economic and political battle between the United States in particular and the Soviet Union, which was fought out not in the United States or in the Soviet Union, but in all sorts of other parts of the world, in particular parts of the world where Islam was the religion. And as that battle was fought out and finally sort of was resolved, these countries where Islam was the religion, were left to fend for themselves, were in a real mess, and they sort of grasped certain elements of Islam in order to try and sort of sort, with them just sorting the mess out that had been left. And so I don't think it's any surprise at all that it's just in the last 20 or 30 years that this extreme version of Islam has come to the fore, and it's come to the fore in sort of quite unexpected ways. As you said, initially the Taliban was supported by the United States, and then they became the arch enemy of the United States. And why did the United States support the Taliban? They supported the Taliban because the Russians had moved into Afghanistan as part of their manoeuvres in the Cold War. And the epicenter of the new Islamicism was Afghanistan, and that was caused by this battle between the two world powers. So what we're seeing now isn't the result of the way Islam has developed over the centuries or anything like that. It's a result of the way capitalism has developed since the Second World War, in fact. It's something that's a relatively new phenomenon. That's sort of my take on it anyway.
What I said, I'd only intended to speak for half an hour. As it was, I overran and had to skip and jump, which probably made my presentation rather disjointed. But yes, certainly the Middle East post-1945 was a battleground in the Cold War. In fact, some historians point to the downfall of Mossadegh as in fact the outbreak of serious Cold War. There were reservations in Europe about the intentions of the Soviet Union when they refused to have what the West considered free and open elections in Czechoslovakia and Poland and Hungary and places like that. But yes, Iran was where the two sides faced each other, and the intentions were made clear that Iran was to be, at least in the sphere of interest of the West, and open to free enterprise, and the profits of the Anglo-Iranian Oil Corporation were not to be mucked about with. you know, and from that is something Iranians haven't forgotten to the present day, and a lot of the tensions between Iran and the United States and the West in particular today, you know, with the development of nuclear energy and so on, it, you know, can be seen dates back to this particular period where the West interfered in what was democratically elected government. It was mildly left-wing and reformist, and you know, the kinds of things that even someone like Attlee wouldn't have balked at doing.
You mentioned that the Ayatollah had Xerox and fax to help him. Now, some would say, and some did say at the time, that of all institutions, the BBC World Service gave him a bit of a hand as well, by broadcasting various messages that he'd sort of sent, he'd formulated. I don't know if you have any comments on that particularly, but it was certainly an issue that was raised, shall we say, on various BBC programmes at the time, on one at least, the feedback programme, which is a rather strange role for the BBC, according to its image of itself. The other thing is, of course, that I suppose the problem with how Islam is seen by people, lots of people in this country, is that it's kind of seen as one thing, and I think you've said it, and Howard certainly pointed it out, that it's about as diverse in its way as Christianity, really. Quite apart from anything else, there is the division between Sunni and Shia, which very roughly corresponds to the Catholic-Protestant division in Christianity. And, you know, the Quran, another thing, something that I had thought was the case, I probably just accepted it because it seemed that this was the information that was being transmitted and anything that was said about the Quran. The Quran isn't really one book anyway, it's a collection of sayings originally. It's what somebody, now I'm not sure if there was one person or three people involved, I think there was one main person, collected together Muhammad's sayings as he and others could remember them, and did a bit of editing because Muhammad spoke in a certain dialect, and I think the bloke wanted to sort of make it as authentic as possible. He realised that some of the Muslim warriors would have slightly misquoted Muhammad because they didn't speak in the same idiom as he did. And that's what it is. It's not one text dictated by the angel Gabriel, supposedly, as was the impression I got that was what you were supposed to think it was. But it is in fact a sort of collection of, and neither wonder it's inconsistent, because it reflects what Muhammad thought and said at different times in his life. And this